Welcome everyone to this morning's session. My name is Melissa Davis and I'm coming to you from Edith Cowan University in Perth, Western Australia. It's my pleasure to welcome the attendees to the session, but in particular to welcome our speaker, Alison Casey, who's going to be talking about support for flipping the classroom. So Alison, over to you.
Thank you very much. That's right. I want to talk to you today about how the learning and teaching team at the University of Notre Dame are developing some sustainable support, slipping in the theme there, for academics who want to use flipped classroom delivery method. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the land from which I'm presenting, the Gadigal and the Wongal country of the Eora Nation. Our Fremantle campus is on Whadjuk country and our Broome campus is on Yarrowurrung country, and I welcome you to put in the chat the country that you're on right now. I'd also like this to be a bit of a conversation because, oops, I don't know what went wrong there, but there we go. Because that's the nature of this conference, is people coming together and sharing their experiences. So I'm quite active on Twitter, and I've already put up a hashtag, which is the hashtag of this conference with the word flip after it. That's my Twitter handle there, and that QR code, if you hold your phone up to it, will take you to my Twitter account where we can continue this conversation about flipped classroom. I can hear about what your experiences are. So what I'd like to walk you through is a research project, a ISSOTL project that we're doing on supporting academics to use flipped classroom, to do it in a sustainable way, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. First of all, I think we've all got some idea of what flipped classroom is, but just to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, I'll do the definitions. Increasingly, our time that we spend with our students is precious, it's valuable. So we want to spend that time where we can see our students or even have them on Zoom with us, collaborating with each other. We want them to be actively learning. We want them to be asking us questions. We want them to be problem solving. But what that means is that they need to do a little bit of pre-work. So before class, students need to work on their own to master content, to work out some of the skills that they might need, some of the simple ones. They're going to have to be able to have some way of checking their understanding so that when they come into class, they can have this active learning experience. And then after the class, they also work as individuals. They work on their assessments. They respond to some of the feedback you've had in class. They still want to work collaboratively with each other. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means as well. So it's really only in the last few years that enough research has come together that we can actually quite definitively say now, flipped classroom is good practice. It's good teaching practice. It's a good example of active learning. We want our academics to use it. But it is quite different to how a lot of us learned at university. It's quite different to how certainly a lot of the academics at my university like to teach. So even when you present academics with the evidence, there's a barrier. It's quite a big change for them. So you've probably heard what I've heard. It's I haven't got enough time to do it. It looks like there's a lot of preparation work. I'm not really familiar with the technology, so I don't know that I'd be very comfortable applying it. I don't think my students would like it. My students aren't used to learning in this way. There's any number of things to stop academics from using this method. So they need support. How are we going to supply that support? So we looked around when we decided that we wanted our academics to use this method to find out what sort of support other universities are giving their academics. And I had quite a wide look at what I could find out from university websites. And the major way of supporting flipped classroom seems to be workshops. Come along to a workshop, learn about flipped classroom. I think ANU's got coffee courses that they can do in flipped classroom. Almost every university supplies resource sets, as we have tried as well. But that's got to be supplemented by individual support. So they'll have a whole lot of resources and they'll say, get in touch with the learning and teaching team to help you to apply these methods and use these resources. it's all quite labour intensive. And the situation that we've got at the University of Notre Dame is that our learning and teaching office, it's central and it's tiny. There's 3.5 academic developers. We don't have learning designers. We don't have a media team. We don't have anybody embedded in faculties. We're it. So anything that we provide to academics has got to be fairly light touch from our point of view. So the whole workshop and the individual sorts of stuff, that's not going to work for us. So when we're trying to solve this problem, we decided to run it as a Scholarship of Teaching Learning research project for a number of reasons. We wanted to keep ourselves accountable. We wanted to collect good evidence that what we were doing was meaningful and going to be used. We wanted to build in feedback cycles to make sure that even when the research project was finished, this kind of support kept being assessed because that evaluation cycle's built in, and that we could continue to improve it. So this is our research question. How does a very small central learning and teaching team support educators throughout the institution? And we've got 3 campuses, Perth, Sydney and Broome, and also some smaller ones spread around the place, to use a pedagogically sound and consistent flipped classroom approach. So I've added in some modifiers there because if you have a look at the literature, if you've given flipped classroom a go yourself, you know that there's a fairly wide interpretation of what it does. Some academics think, I'm just going to bung some videos up on the LMS, there we go, done. So we wanted to have some pedagogy behind it, and our students are always telling us we want consistency between our courses. We want to know what to expect. If you look at this question, it's not so much a question as a statement of a problem. And so we're not really looking for an answer so much as a solution. So what that means is it's the research methodology that fits best with this is design-based research, which is becoming more and more common in ISSOTL and in education research. It's kind of like a action research on steroids. And these are the steps to it, is that you formulate the problem, which we've just done. You do a literature review, obviously, as you do with any research. You do a practice review as well, because you want to know if somebody's already solved this problem, because why waste your time? Then when you want to propose the solution, the first solution that you propose, because you're going to put it out in the field and test it, you want it to be a relatively good solution. You don't want to throw something out there and have people go, well, that's garbage, stop talking to me. So what you do is you look for some theoretical frameworks to build your solution on so that it's pretty robust. Then you put the first draft of your solution out into the field, and then you do the cycles of evaluation and so forth, and redesign. And that can go on forever. You have to pick a point at which to stop. And that's a whole other thing as well. Another reason that we thought the design-based research would be a really good fit for the problem that we're trying to solve is that there's a growing body of thought in higher education. It's already fairly well established in primary and secondary education that teaching is a design science or a design art. And the work of Diana Laurillard really supports that. Pete Goodyear's work especially very much talks about teaching as design. It's a pretty well accepted paradigm in primary and secondary education, but it really isn't in higher education. And that's for a whole lot of reasons that I could speculate on it. But I think the main one is that a lot of people who are educating in academia don't have a teaching background. They don't have that experience of having design practice built in to when they're putting curriculums together. They might even have curriculum handed to them. So this quote by Sue Bennett, that representing effective teaching and learning designs in a systematic way will support teachers' design practices by encouraging adaptive reuse, which will in turn ultimately lead to improved practice. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So that says to us that the sort of thing that we should be looking at as sustainable support is a design pattern, a scaffold. And one of the great things about this conference is that you can go back and look at other people's presentations that were on when you're going to something else. And earlier this morning, I went back over Barb McFarlane and Joe Hook's presentation from Monash about curriculum design. And they came up with a similar thing, a scaffold that academics could lean on to help them design, in their case, their curriculum, in this case, an approach. So the thing that we developed is, and I'm still trying to work out exactly the right name for it, because it's kind of a scaffold, but there's a little bit more to it. And I'll get into that as I progress. But this is the theoretical basis that we built the scaffold on. And these are 9 principles for delivering flipped classroom. And they were put together by Min-Kyu Kim from Southern California, published in 2014. Their paper's been cited over 600 times. So these have got a very wide audience. It's been very well received. They developed the principles themselves empirically. They observed flipped classroom being delivered in a variety of disciplines, and they developed these principles, but then they mapped them to a community of inquiry framework, which I think makes it really robust. Community inquiry framework, I'm not going to go into here necessarily, but except to say that it's incredibly well established framework for delivering online and blended learning, because it brings together the teaching presence and the cognitive presence, which I think academics or all educators are fairly familiar with, but makes sure that you also build in the social presence, which is really important for successful sort of blended learning delivery, where students can connect with each other and to you as a teacher. So those principles were used in designing the scaffold. So what is this thing that we've developed? It is at the moment, it's a 4-page document. It's a Word document. And it's got this kind of spine of 5 tables, and they're planning tables. So academics fill these in, and by the time they've filled them in, they've planned their flipped classroom delivery. That's the full cycle of tables. And I'm going to go through each table in a bit more detail. But not only does this document have these tables, it's also got the principles behind each one. So there's a bit of a rationale with each table, because we're talking about academics. They do love evidence. They like to know that there's something behind what it is that they're doing. So each table's got some instructions on how to use it, but also the educational principles behind it, and those principles of Kim that I just showed you. Not only has it got these principles, it's also got links out to resources that we've developed in-house. We've discovered at Notre Dame that our academics are much more receptive to resources that they feel have been developed for them, even though they might be quite general ones, how to use the discussion board in the LMS and how to, if they feel like it's somebody from their university talking to them on, if it's a video or on a PDF, they're just much more likely to use it. So we've got this huge range of resources, and we've contextualized them. So each table has got a set of resources that academics can choose from, which essentially means that they can build their own continuing professional learning. So for instance, if they're looking at the pre-class table and they're just like, I don't know how to do a video, they've got beside that table how to make a video, how to make an engaging video, how to load it into the LMS, how to put a poll in the video, all sorts of resources around it, so that they can look at those resources and go, well, I don't have a sticking point now. Everything that I say I don't know how to do, there's a resource on how to do it. There's still the option for them to get in touch with us, but that's much more light touch in this case. So this document with all of these elements in it is the product that we think will provide sustainable support for the classroom at our university. And I'll tell you where we're up to with the research towards the end. But first, I want to go through to what the tables are. The first table allows the academic to take the course that they've currently got, so they don't have to feel like they start from scratch. They've already got a course, they've got resources in it, they can use this table to break down that course to work out what they can split into the pre-class and the in-class activities. We're trying very hard to get our academics to think of their courses built up of concepts rather than topics. We're not getting very far with that. But they can put in what their content is, how it's currently delivered, what are the activities that students do with those, and is it, and this is the flipped classroom bit, is it suitable for students to access on their own? So once they've broken down their whole course in this table, it should be really clear for them what are the bits that the students can do on their own pre-class and what are the bits that they need to do in class. So once they've broken that down, then they can start building their delivery. And this is the pre-class table. We want to make sure that they've got their learning outcome, because I've been hearing in this conference that academics don't always have a very close relationship with their constructive alignment. So we want to build that in because we want it to be pedagogically sound. What is the activity that the individual is going to do? Because learning, again, pedagogically sound, the principles of Ron Oliver, is the student activity is based around the resource that they've got there. So we've got the activity and the resource, and later on there'll be how do they interact with feedback. We've got the expected time on task there, not necessarily to communicate with the students, but we've found, and you've probably found this too, when everybody went online last year, academics went, brilliant, I can put everything online, every piece of information I have about this course. And students found it completely overwhelming. So if we build this in, academics can work out what the core content is and communicate with that with the student, and then they can say, well, we've got all this other stuff too, but that's optional, you don't have to do that. Then there's the communication to students, which is absolutely critical to the success of a flipped classroom delivery. How are the students going to interact with the activity? How are they going to check their understanding? How do they know what they're supposed to do? And then we've got this green column. How does it connect to in-class activities? Because if students can't see how the activity connects with what they're going to do in class, they're not going to do it. And then there's the table where they plan what's going to go on in class. And you see that that green column is the same one. And that's where you do group activities. We want to build informative assessment and feedback modalities, because especially academics have moved from solely face-to-face to blended learning. When they're doing face-to-face, they tend to give feedback and formative assessment quite intuitively. They don't even necessarily know that they're doing it. And then when they moved online, they lost it. They can't listen to their students' conversations. They can't see what they're writing. So this encourages them to build it in. So that's their flipped planning tables. And then after class, students are generally working on their assessments, but we wanted to build into this, how can students seek feedback and how can they connect to each other so that we've got a social presence in there. And then at the end, there's a reflective table, and the instructions that go with this say, you use this quite often if you're new to flipped classroom and all your students are new to flipped classroom. If it's all been running along for semesters and it's all fairly fine, maybe just have that at the end. So there's quite a few advantages to having a planner like this for academics to use. So quite apart from the planning utility is this constitutes a record that academics can keep. They can use it to demonstrate evidence of growth. They can use it for their performance reports. They can use it as evidence of innovative practice if they're going for teaching awards and that kind of stuff. So where are we up to with the research? Because I'm running out of time. We've given this document out to representatives from each of our faculties. We've only got 3 faculties for some feedback. And those 3 academics are very generous with their time. They gave us quite a lot of feedback, but it really broke down into 2 things. They like the tables. They think they're usable. They can understand what they were. Brilliant. Very happy about that. They wanted more resources. So the sorts of resources that we tend to have are the kind of technological resources. How do you use a discussion table? How do you, basically use all of the technology that we've got? But they wanted more things like, how do I provide actionable feedback? Can I see another course that's using flipped classroom? So quite resources are kind of beyond the scope of this this piece of work, which was really interesting for us. So we're in the process of building more supportive resources like that. We're gathering the sorts of questions that they asked from this feedback so that we can build those resources. But we kind of feel like it's a little bit out of the scope of this particular research project. We're going to do it anyway. We've put it out into the wild now. So we've changed a little bit of the wording that our academics gave us some feedback on. So it's being used in classrooms right now. The academics that I've spoken to who are using it is like almost exactly the same feedback. Yep, great. Using tables, really easy to understand. But like at the end of semester, I'd like to chat a little bit about how do I make, how do I do group work more effectively? How do I get students to do peer feedback more effectively? So it's much more than flipped classroom delivery are the sorts of questions that they're asking us. So in a certain way, it's kind of exposed a need for more support, which we're also going to have to design sustainably. So the advantage of this is it's simple, it's easy to understand, it seems to be a viable, sustainable support mechanism, and it's got built-in professional development in it, which the academic can just choose. It's contextualised so that they don't have to search through a big catalogue or anything. It builds in consistency and good practice, but it has exposed that further teaching support requirements because we haven't got enough to do, I guess. So that's it. That's my project. Thanks for coming along and having a listen to it. And for anybody watching the recording, I welcome questions on the Twitter feed as well as what's going on here. So just stop. I'm doing there.
Thank you so much, Alison, for a great presentation and really great piece of research. I really feel for the challenges that you've identified there, and all of those things about being a small team, the sustainability, all the things that we know that academics are, and obviously I am an academic as well, but I've done some academic development work, I know a lot of those challenges, and it looks like you've got some really some great frameworks and some great starting points there from people. So I won't chatter on too much. I've got some things I can ask you for sure, but invite, are there other people at the session? Do you have any questions?
I can see that Verily has asked how many faculty were engaged. So with the design-based research, it goes through quite a few cycles. So that very first cycle was just, do you think this is a plausible solution? And that was 3 academics who had a look at it. They were fairly senior academics. That they didn't put it into practice. They just read through it, as it turned out, incredibly carefully, and gave me feedback on how plausible they thought it would be and whether they thought their academics would use it. What is happening now is that I've sent the templates out, like I put out various calls to who's interested in that. I'm also teaching a graduate certificate in learning and teaching in higher education, and I'm teaching curriculum design. I said, oh, by the way, I've got this flipped classroom design scaffold, and almost all of them have taken it up and are using it in their classes, which is kind of a bit sad because I can't use it in my research because there's a conflict of interest. They're my students at the moment. So as soon as that finishes, I'll be able to pick them up. So at the moment, as far as I can tell, it's not a lot of academics using it right now. It's probably 6 or 7 and possibly 8. They're not necessarily using it either for a whole course. Some of them are using it for a week intensive. Okay. Some of them are using it for like 1 or 2 weeks. They just think it would really suit this part of the course. The intention is that you can use it however you like. You can use it for a full course, or you can just have a bit of a taster for a week or 2. Were they shared online or introduced via workshops? We're bearing in mind that this is being recorded, we're undergoing a bit of a restructure at the moment, and it has meant that communication between staff has been quite limited while the new structure kind of sorts itself out. So all I've been able to do is contact people that I have relationships with in all of the schools to let them know that it's happening. We do send out a staff newsletter every fortnight, so we put it in there. I haven't made the template publicly available. I am planning to publish. I feel like I've finished the paper, but of course, you know, when you write a thing like this, 3 or 4 people have got to, you know, read it and just go, yes, that's okay. You're not slandering the university or anything. So when that goes out, it'll have the tables in it. But because the resources that go with it are localized to Notre Dame, like I can't just send out that document because most of the links won't work. But I'm definitely planning on not only just publishing what I've got right now because that's ready to go, but once I've got all the feedback back and I'm feeling like this research is going in a direction that I hadn't quite expected with all of this demand for the extra support.
Yes.
Which people have obviously always needed, but they kind of haven't had the opportunity to ask for it.
Or they perhaps didn't know that they needed it, did they? Until you've started kind of got them thinking about these things.
Yeah,
it is great.
Column there, I don't know how to fill it in. Yeah,
it's a bit of a Pandora's box, isn't it? But it's great that you've got people engaged, clearly.
Yeah. So, yeah, everybody that I've showed it to has gone, oh, brilliant, I could probably use that. It was interesting to see in the Monash presentation that they didn't start out trying to do support like that. They started out like everybody else does is with, you know, we've got all these resources, we've got an LMS template that you need to use. And they said, you know, academics had actually told them we don't want a planning scaffold because we're grown-up educators, we don't need our hands held like that. But they said they started using scaffolds like that when they were running workshops, and people kept picking them up, and they were very similar actually. I was going, oh no, they're going to present the same thing that I am. But they were for something a little bit different. But they said people just kept picking them up and going, can we have copies of these? And they started using them as planning scaffolds. It's a really common way of planning in secondary and primary teaching. Like that sort of design is core to primary and secondary initial teacher education. They have those incredibly detailed lesson templates, and it'll often have, like, if you're teaching science, it'll have a constructivist pedagogy built into it, and it'll say, you know, this is where you engage your students, this is where they do an experiment, this is, you know. So that's really common. It just hasn't caught on in higher education at all.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So it seems about kind of the sustainability aspect. If I remember rightly, you talked about kind of communities of practice or that kind of a thing that you want to work towards, and hopefully people are able to then share ideas and tips and tricks amongst each other a bit.
Something that the academics that have already seen it have really asked for is, I would love to see another course using this.
Yeah.
So we really would love to set that up as like, just put in a week of your planning and a little bit of tell us how it goes. It's sort of encouraging people to use their vulnerability a little bit. And what I'm hearing a lot in this conference is it's really hard to get academic, and that's my experience as well, is to expose that vulnerability because, you know, they're professors. They're world experts in whatever they are. They can't come in saying, well, I don't know how to give actionable
feedback. Quite sure about this, or how this is going to work, or, you know, we're also sensitive to student evaluations, I think.
Yes. I don't want to do something that's not going to work. I don't want to do something the students are going to hate.
Yeah, and taking that risk. Yeah, people don't feel safe for a range of different reasons, and it's difficult. Yeah. An idea that popped into my head as you were kind of talking, I don't know whether this would work or it may be something that you're already doing. An institution that I used to work at had this concept of I think they called it open classrooms. So it was literally, I guess, that, you could go into some, and people volunteered for it and said, yep, I'm teaching chemistry. I've got this big first year chemistry class. Yep. People are welcome to come in. Obviously, where you've got online or stuff that's not happening in the classroom there, it could be in terms of your LMS site, for example. But I wondered whether a strategy a bit like that might be something that, you get a couple of front runners who are saying, yeah, look, I'm happy not just to talk to people, but even have someone come in and, see me actually do this.
I love that idea. Because we're always looking for sustainable ways of doing pretty much everything in our line of work.
Of course.
And I've seen this presented a little bit at this conference as well, the idea of having champions in each school.
Yes.
So we've got champions for almost everything now, and they're people that our team have got good relationships with, and we'll just say, you're the example. And ideally, we'd like those people to be the ones that say, look, I'm doing this, come on in. I've seen some of them doing it kind of informally within their own school.
And that's fabulous. They're the kind of leaders that will do that. You'll have some people that will do that naturally, which is fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. And we're trying to get up peer review as well, but like not, managerial peer review, but like professional learning peer review.
Not a summative kind of thing, but that kind of then fits quite nicely with that, doesn't it? And if you get that really culture going.
And that's been a big robot for that, is people are just like, I don't want anyone watching me. They're going to judge me. That is a cultural thing. It takes time, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.